stay on, great, we can.
Yep, true. All good. Thanks, Margaret. Thank you for that. So yeah, at the end of a meeting, don't be afraid to really make sure it ends on a positive note. Reflect back on everything you've achieved in the meeting. Maybe pick something in particular that was a momentous part of the meeting where you celebrated completing a project or making a really good step forward on a project. Or perhaps just ask everyone for their contribution, what was their highlight of the meeting. And then the last and third tool is playing your whole bench. People, there's a reason everyone is at that meeting, so make the most of it and be sure that you play your whole bench, that everyone has an opportunity to contribute. There will be that person who is quite happy to take over the whole meeting, but there'll also be that person who's sitting back and waiting for their turn. I'm a big believer that time is precious, so let's just make sure everyone can have their say. And again, I refer to Losada. He found in his research that high-performing teams, they balance the asking of questions with the making of a point on one-on-one. So a good balanced meeting will have one question balanced with some information that was shared. After all, a meeting full of questions is not going to be overly productive, and you're going to be leaving that room thinking, oh my gosh, I had got more questions now than I ever did before. So, and ways to really keep track of that can be, like you see there on the screen, is virtually drawing the table or listing the names if you've got your participants on a virtual call and jotting down next to them to make sure that they've all contributed something. And you might even do it that it's a Q, they've asked a question, or it might be an S, sharing of information. And you can start to see that those things are balancing out at the same time as well. Making sure everyone has the opportunity to speak, I know can be challenging, even more so in a virtual meeting, or maybe not, because you do have the opportunity to mute people. But keep track and invite people in for their opportunity to speak. Making balanced participation the norm means that people are more likely to stay engaged too. They're not going to go off onto their phones or checking their emails because they may be called upon to participate. So it's a great way of keeping people on their toes and engaged as well. So that's very quickly through those 3 tools for you all. I know you've got busy days ahead. So it was to start with a sizzle, don't let it fizzle. The peak end rule, so that everyone leaves with a real memorable experience and a positive one, and play your whole bench. People will feel valued and that they've had the opportunity to contribute. So as a final note now, what I'd really love, if you do have the time, and it doesn't matter if you don't, is whether if you've facilitated a meeting or you're going to be a participant, is what's something that you will change today to make your next meeting more effective. And thank you so much for being on the call, and for those who came back too after our bombing that happened there.
Thank you, Belinda. As we wait to see what comes into the chat box, Mia, maybe you can just put up those last 2 slides, and then we can entertain any questions too. The one about, here we go, on the dose of positivity. If you want another free dose of positivity, I'll make sure I change the password and the code. But we have a couple more weeks left in the month of May. We'll be offering 2 each week. So reserve your spot there. And then on the last slide is how you can stay connected with Belinda down under, and Mia and myself. Don't feel like you have to scratch, write down all this information. We'll be sending you the slides, and you'll have all that after today. So Mia, let's see what we have in the chat box on one small action people can take.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and see. We have from Nita, being more cognizant of the bench and ensuring that everyone makes at least one contribution. I think that's, the bench really is a valuable theory, almost like a sport, right? And it's good to make sure everyone's contributing. Rochelle, starting with a fizzle, she loves the gratitude idea, and ending on a positive also.
Mhm.
Cool.
And Eric says that he can ask for input from someone who hasn't contributed yet. Margaret, I think that's something that you discussed on Monday too, right?
Yeah, sometimes, again, if you happen to have certain people that tend to dominate the conversation, I love to ask, can we hear from someone we haven't heard from yet? And that's often a cue. And then if it still doesn't, if that subtlety doesn't work, then I will, call on people. And then sometimes you might have some people on your team that tend to be a little bit more introverted, and they've got a lot of great ideas and thinking. So sometimes asking them in advance of the meeting, I'd really like to make sure that you get a chance to contribute your thoughts. So I'd really like you to, offer up something within the first, 15 minutes. So sometimes we have to do that. And also with the extroverts, sometimes we have to take them one-on-one and say, we need to let other people participate, right? We want to play the whole bench.
Awesome. Thanks for that input, Margaret. Heather also shared that she agrees with what Nita said, right? Being more cognizant of the bench, but also making it a habit, which I think is a great point. It's one thing to do it once, but to make it a habit to, engage and to track that information.
Yeah.
Cool. Courtney's on the same page with, looking forward and working to play the whole bench. Sometimes people are at meetings for different reasons. Very true. Perhaps some points are trying to get through that are brushed over by the more outspoken crowd.
Yeah, very much.
Great.
It's great. Great feedback.
Yeah, that is really good feedback.
And Rachel, I meant sizzle. Rachel, to start with that sizzle. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
yes, the sizzle, not the fizzle. Yeah.
And,
there we go.
And you might have noticed, I know in a short 30-minute video, it's tough to, do a lot of these things, but even just in the beginning, if you noticed in this webinar, we asked you to just type in where you're calling in from and how are you feeling today? And you could do that even with your own virtual meetings. How would you describe how you're feeling in one word? Or to Eric's, what are you most grateful for? What's the best thing that's happened to you since we got together last week? So there's all kinds of things that you can do to, get people in that good space. And of course, then a breathing exercise like we did as well is another way. So with that, any questions we can entertain for a few minutes around anything that Belinda covered or anything else? And just go ahead and take yourself off mute or you can type it in, whichever you
Thanks so much for the comments.
Great. Which one's the outside ones?
In between,
Both.
No, the other mail conduit. Not giving up on it, but just the inside ones. But you don't, not very long, so it shouldn't be too hard actually.
Who's those?
getting
Kelly.
again?
Oh, Keegan.
I don't know. It sounds like someone might have a TV on, maybe.
Oh, okay.
You just mute yourselves again if it's your background noise.
Yeah,
Because Mia unmuted us.
that's Eric. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. What about any questions then before we sign off?
Oh, thanks, Nita.
Have
Yeah,
a great day, the New Zealanders.
It's great, Rachel. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, have a great day,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a nice evening over there in the States. And here,
Thanks,
guys.
Belinda. Thanks, everybody.
You've already lived our day.